This program has been made possible in part by the following sponsors. The Trial Lawyers Association of BC. The Vancouver Courier newspaper. My new book about addictions, All the Way Home, Building Recovery That Works. Sex, power, money. Well, power, money, those are the easy ones. Sex, I mean, that'll get your goat in it, well, if you're into that sort of thing. But how do you explain sex, especially to short people? You know, like some kid in kindergarten. Dad, where do babies come from? Well, sweetheart, they usually come from Philadelphia, but later they settle in Florida and Arizona, anything ending in a vowel, you know. Fortunately, they don't need me to explain these things because we have Saleema Noon, who's a sex educator and is often called by parent groups to come into schools and work with kids on this scary, scary subject. Saleema, how great to see you.
You too, David.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So is that in fact what happens? You have to be invited?
Yes, so typically I work in elementary schools, kindergarten to grade 7 students, and parent groups, we call them PACs, PAC Advisory Councils, invite me to come and do usually an evening session for parents, followed by several days in the school working with the children.
Well, that's already, it's funny, an evening session for parents, so you're not having to explain sex to parents, even though they probably could use it.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. So what are you doing? You're telling them what you're going to do.
Basically, that's part of it. I'm talking about the 5 stages of sexual development that children grow through as they come to understand sexuality in a mature way.
Yes.
So we can talk about what kids need to know and when, and how parents can establish themselves early on as their kids' @1 source of sexual health information. And then in doing so, I can give parents a clear overview of what I'll be teaching the kids when I go back.
And at that first meeting with the parents, do you already have people complaining that they don't want you there or that they don't quite understand what it is? You know, why are you there? Isn't this our purview?
You know, parents always have good questions, especially the ones that take time out of their busy schedules to come and meet with me. But more and more, I'm happy to say, parents understand that really what this is, teaching sexual health to our kids, is a safety issue. And so the vast majority of parents are completely supportive of what I'm teaching.
Just explain that. I mean, it's easy to say that, but let us not let that go by. What do you mean it's a safety issue?
Well, a lot of the information that we're giving kids is arming them to resist exploitative and abusive situations. So for example, from day 1, a simple thing like teaching our kids technical terminology for body parts will empower them to vocalize if something exploitative happened to an adult in their life.
Yeah, so it's a very, very tricky situation if someone, especially someone close to the child.
And we know from research that it is usually someone known to the victim in abuse situations.
His or her hand on their leg. That could be avuncular, it could be innocent. It's all about intention, isn't it?
Well, it's about intention, but we need to teach our kids to trust their gut. And if something doesn't feel right, no matter who it is,
get the hell out of here.
We need to focus on the behavior as opposed to the person. And we also need to teach our kids the skills to, like I said, vocalize using technical terminology. So that's one example of how giving this information is about safety. But the reality is our kids are talking about sex more than ever. I mean, I think we agree the world is a much different place than when we were growing up.
Completely.
And our kids are just so much more exposed to so many different things at earlier ages.
I will tell you something that if it happened today, or if there's someone watching this today who is 10 or 11 years old, they will think I'm making this up. But when I was about 10 or 11, I remember a guy in our class named Norm talking about finding used condoms somewhere in the park or something, and I literally didn't know what he was talking about. You know, as far as I was concerned, he was talking about a mathematical equation. What's a used condom? You know,
we didn't talk about that.
Completely clueless. Well, in my family, we're all immaculate conceptions, including me.
In many families.
Yes. I mean, I just showed up one day, you know.
Well, I think, you know, we can say that that is slowly changing, and more parents feel empowered and know how important it is to be open with their kids. I mean, if they're going to hear about things, especially now with the internet, which wasn't around when we were growing up, parents need to always stay one step ahead of the game. And if we don't teach our kids, the simple fact is someone else is going to do it for us.
What do you hear from these parents, before we get to the kids, and that's we'll get to them, but what do you hear from these parents about how highly sexualized we all are, how highly sexualized the culture is? It's not just that we use scantily clad, beautiful girls to sell cars.
No.
Everything has a sexuality fed into it in some way or another. And if the TV is on, and apparently there are several TVs on in every home, even the poorest.
Or they're watching on their iPhone or their iPad or their laptop.
So there's always something going on that's sexual in nature, you know, and it's like nonstop. So what do the parents say about that kind of world? Whether they just accept that that's what it is?
Well, we have to accept it because that's our world.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that we can't protect our kids and teach them to think critically and teach them to be media literate. And especially for parents of young children, there's no reason why we can't put boundaries around what they're exposed to. And most importantly, have conversations. You know, I always tell parents, PVRs are great, right? Because you can watch a TV show together and pause it whenever you need to have a quick conversation. I have two stepdaughters. They're 16 and 18 now. But when they were younger and we were watching TV shows as a family, for example, we used to often watch Modern Family. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I know.
Great comedy, clever, love it.
Yep.
Pretty adult in the storyline from time to time and the sense of humor, but no problem because we could pause it. I would take a few minutes to clarify, to debrief on what we just heard, and then we'd go on. Not that it's a bad show. I love it. Not that there's anything in there that I didn't think our girls should be exposed to. It was very mature comedy.
Do you have many parents who use things like, a friend of mine invented something called Net Nanny, I think it's called.
Oh, yeah.
Who use things like that?
Yeah, but they aren't foolproof.
No, of course not.
Parental control devices are not foolproof. And
but do a lot of people use them?
Absolutely.
I mean, even just your basic TELUS or Shaw or your PVR or whatever, your new Samsung thing has a feature on it.
Yes.
To block out programs for kids.
Yes, but the challenge is that young children, for example, when doing a school project, can type in something to Google and get pornographic photos. You know, I mean, and no Net Nanny is going to prevent that from happening.
Has anybody ever calculated, is it something truly like 98% of the net is pornographic?
I don't know about that.
But it's enormous.
I wouldn't be surprised, you know? And I think back to, for example, the nature of TV shows that we used to watch growing up. I mean, for my parents, the raciest it got was Love Boat and Fantasy Island. That's what I was watching. And I never got to watch Fantasy Island because it was on at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night.
Compare how naive Magnum PI was compared to, I've been watching reruns of Dexter on my new Netflix thing, you know, and every night they go in this bar that the Koshka Brotherhood runs, you know, in Miami, and it's all bare naked girls dancing, and that's just considered basic. And every 4 minutes, someone's going to bed with somebody. You know, that's a standard network TV show.
Yeah. The nature of what our kids are seeing is much different.
You know, this court case in which the estate of Marvin Gaye successfully sued Robin Thicke and Pharrell Williams for plagiarism of a song. So my son, who's I'm sure older than you, said, "Oh no, but you should see what it is." So of course I went on YouTube and I watched what it was, and within a minute I turned it off because, in my opinion, but that's 'cause I'm an old fogey, it was sick crap. It was filled with this bad names for women, blatant sexism, misogyny, all this, like, please, would you guys grow up?
But our kids are desensitized.
That's what I mean.
They don't
That's
even
the problem.
see it. They don't see it as a big deal. You know, I mean, still, although this is decreasing, thankfully, when we talk about homophobia in schools, the kids say, "Oh, come on, Saleema, we say that's so gay, but it's just how we talk. It's not a big deal."
Yeah, we just use the word.
But what is the meaning behind that? You know, regardless of your intention, what impact does it have on others?
Okay,
so they are desensitized.
Let's leave the folks for a minute. Let's go to these little kids. So I don't know about the. See, I'm so ignorant. I don't know, but what did you call them? The 5 stages of
sexual development.
Yeah. So what's the first stage?
The preschool stage.
And what is that?
David, these kids are the most fun to teach.
Are they?
Because they are little. I approach all of my sessions with kids at every age as body science. I tell the kids I'm going to teach them how to be body scientists. I'm going to teach them scientific information about their body and scientific words that doctors use.
Okay.
So the little ones in kindergarten grade 1, which really would make up this stage of development, they love it. They hang on to my every word like it's the most interesting thing
they've
ever
interesting.
heard.
Of course
it is
it's
interesting, and they haven't learnt yet. Here's the key. They haven't learnt that sex is still a taboo subject in our society. I'll never forget, I was in a kindergarten class one time explaining that there are many different ways that human reproduction happens, but usually between a man and a woman. The penis is placed inside the vagina to deliver the sperm to the egg.
Did you get that?
That's right.
Somebody write that down.
It's never too late to learn, okay?
Yeah.
So one of the kids stopped me and she said, okay, so wait a minute. The man can put his penis inside the vagina?
Yes.
And I said, well, sometimes that's how it happens. And she said, well, how does he get it back on?
That's very good.
So I explained in one sentence or less that the penis is not detachable, and she was fine with that. She just needed the facts. They're very scientific.
It is detachable.
And we move on.
It is detachable on a magnificent statue by the great Italian sculptor Marino Marini on the waterfront entrance to the Guggenheim in Venice. He's on a horse. There's a guy on a horse, and there's this giant detachable penis, and it was designed.
I have not seen that.
I've seen it many times. It's designed so that when the clergy visit it, they could detach the penis, and it just looked like it was a guy on a horse.
Yeah, clean it up a little bit.
Clean it up a little bit. Yeah. So, I always think that one of the nicest, it's not so nice, but one of the funniest, wonderful things about language is how many words there are for these body parts. And we're not going to do this list. But for example, there's got to be minimum 100 words in English for penis. My all-time favorite is Johnson.
Because as a society, we haven't been sexually mature enough to use a scientific term.
Yes.
Right? But when we teach kids the scientific terms, they learn the penis just as easily as they learn the intestines or the elbow. It's not a big deal to them.
Now, do you use pictures?
I do have a pop-up book that I
brought with me.
It is a legendary among grade 7s.
That is already, that's a bad joke.
I should have brought it today. It is, it's a good visual to use because it's not cartoony. It's pretty accurate. It gives a good idea of what these body parts look like.
Pop-up book. Yes, I open a book and I'm afraid to think how this works.
Oh, the kids handle it really well.
They think it's fun.
So the little ones are easiest to teach. Stage 2 is the primary stage. These are kids mostly between the grades of 2 and 3. And although they're a little bit more giggly than the younger ones, they're still very matter of fact in terms of how they absorb the information. They're interested. They're starting to form some really good questions too.
So how many, we only have 30 seconds, but very quickly to break, but how many parents say, well, if you're going to teach them that the penis goes in the vagina, does that mean that they're immediately running to the cloakroom to check this out?
That is a common concern.
Yes.
But the key is to give boundaries. When I explain how reproduction happens, my next sentence is for adults only, so it's nothing you have to worry about.
And do the kids ever ask when? When do I get to do this?
Yeah, and that's when I say,
what's your answer?
I can't answer that. You got to ask your parents.
Aha, very good. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll take a break and talk to our parents.
Okay.
Sure. This is great. Yes, take a little breather. Oh, we need a breather, heavy stuff. Your opportunity to send a note to davidberner.com. Always happy to hear your thoughts, and also an opportunity for those lovely folks who support us here to say hello on Shaw Community Television Cable 4. We'll be back in a minute after I just...
This program has been made possible in part by the following sponsors. The Trial Lawyers Association of BC. The Vancouver Courier newspaper.
My new book about addictions, All the Way Home, Building Recovery That Works. about sex education for youngsters, and Saleema Noon has been doing this for quite a long time, and she is invited, usually by PACs, by parent associations, to come into schools and work mostly with little kids. Let's dive into, I want to hear more about these various stages. We talked about the first stage, but let's just dive into, I think, one of the controversial elements of this, which probably causes you always a little bit of flack, what you call diversity, sexual expression, and sexual orientation. What do those three words mean, and how are they different from one another? Diversity, I understand. Sexual orientation, I understand. I'm not sure what you mean by sexual expression.
Well, I think those issues, you're right, are difficult for some parents to get their heads around, especially when we're talking about introducing those concepts at an early age. To me, when we talk about diversity, sexual expression, sexual orientation, we're talking about inclusivity. My goal in the classroom is to present the information and use language that will make every child in that room feel like I'm talking to them.
Right.
Regardless of how they dress, or who they're attracted to, or if they're a tomboy, or what they're interested in, or where they came from. And so that's what we're talking about when it comes to diversity. Sexual expression would refer to how you express yourself sexually, from what you wear to what your likes and dislikes are at any age. We all have a sexual identity.
How much the world has changed. Again, when I was a kid going to school, there was a kid in our neighborhood who was the son of a police officer who was the most outrageously, flamboyantly gay boy that anybody's ever met. And he sort of threw this in your face. He threw his style. I mean, I don't know what he was actually doing in terms of any sexual practice.
He was expressing himself.
Because we were young, so I don't know that he was even having a sex life, but this was his style. And he horrified people all over the place. And, you know, he was just so different, you know.
And it's not like today we have more people who are different, or more people who are gay, or more people who are transgender compared to when you were growing up. It's just that as a society, we have become more inclusive. And people feel safer to express themselves in a way that works for them.
I remember vividly in 1990, I was living in Toronto for 2 years, and I went to a major cinema right at Avenue Road and Bloor. And I remember the two young men came in holding hands and sat down, and I looked at them and I thought, oh, that's amazing. That's so great that these boys feel so confident and relaxed to hold hands in public, you know. I thought it was quite refreshing. I thought it was, you know, I basically wanted to go up and congratulate them. I didn't. I mean, I stayed out of their space.
Well, in a perfect world, there would be no reaction. It would be just like a man and a woman walking into a movie theater holding hands. And I can guarantee you that a large portion of grade 1s and 2s would have no reaction to that.
So how many parents are instead timbering up on your head and saying, you're teaching homosexuality, you're promoting what you laughingly call diversity?
When I started teaching about 17 years ago, that kind of attitude, those kinds of questions were more common.
Really?
Yeah. Now the general understanding, I would say, is that we don't teach people to be gay, just that we don't teach people or encourage people to be straight. It's one small piece. Their sexual orientation is one small piece of who a person is. And so nothing I say in a classroom is going to sway or convince a student to be a certain way. Instead, what we're trying to do is empower kids especially, but people of all ages, to be comfortable in their own skin. Regardless of what they're wearing or how they feel as male or female or somewhere in between.
Do you allow yourself, Saleema, to get embroiled in this nurture or nature conversation? Because I don't.
No. When I
don't have a clue why some people are what they are.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It is what it is. Exactly.
It is what it is. I'm left-handed. Am I losing sleep wondering why I'm the only person in my family that's left-handed? Who cares? It's a small piece of who I am as a person. That's just the way it is.
But people do try to ask you, I'm sure, you know, was my son born this way? Was my daughter born this way? Is it my fault? Fault?
And, you know, when kids ask, I explain that we don't know exactly why someone is gay or someone is straight or someone is somewhere on that continuum, because there is a continuum. But what we do know is that it's not something that people choose or are forced into, and it's not something that can be changed.
You see, a lot of people don't accept this idea of a
More and more
continuum.
they do.
A lot
More
of
and more
people
they
think
do.
this, you're gay or you're straight, and they forgot about this thing called the normal curve.
Yeah, and that's not, I mean, that's what we know from research. I mean, that's just how it is. So
So
you know,
tell me the other stages.
oh, so stage 3 is the adolescent stage. These kids are lots of fun to teach because we call them the gross meowers. They're completely disgusted by any of this stuff.
Anything.
And parents often
And are they
tell
also
me,
disgusting?
No,
Oh,
they're
they're just
actually
disgusted. Okay,
they are
yeah.
disgusted, but they secretly want the information, and they have fantastic questions.
Oh.
Within 10 minutes, they've settled down, both the boys and the girls, and we can go on and on and on because they're really into it. But getting them there is the problem. Parents often tell me, okay, Saleema, I don't know what to do. My grade 4 son or daughter has told me they're not coming to school on the day that you come because they already know the information, they've already met you before, and you're just some kind of pervert anyway, you know?
Perfect. Yes.
That's just a natural phase of their development, and it's because they learn from people and things around them that this is how they should act. They should be embarrassed talking about sex.
Sorry.
No, just because we're still an immature society when it comes to sexual health.
I was asked to be a therapist once for a group of gay and lesbian people who were alcoholics, drug addicts, who had been to the United States for treatment and were back at home. They were going to 12-step meetings. And so I went and saw what the group was about, and I said, yeah, okay, I'll do that. So I came back, and then I was the group leader, and we did a few weeks. And by about the third week, I said, I have a question for you. Let's go around the room. When did you start using drugs and alcohol? And 11, 13, 12, 14, 11. And suddenly, by the fourth person, one of the people light bulbed. You know, one of the people, oh my God.
Why?
And I
wonder
said,
why.
Oh my God, why? Oh, just when you were going through puberty and discovering that you were attracted to the same gender, you started going nuts and trying to drown your sorrows in confusion, blah, 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 and so on. Yeah.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah, and even in the clinic that I work in these days, we often will have gay and lesbian people who, and many are self-conscious and you know, they either very hide or very declare. Mm-hmm. You know, we don't have enough people who are just, yeah, that's who I am.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I'm happy to say that here in BC, we are in the process of revamping our sexual health curriculum.
Oh, are we?
Yeah.
What are we doing?
And the new curriculum is going to be looking more at inclusivity and offering really comprehensive education to our kids from a young age. Compared to the rest of the provinces in the country, we have always been a leader when it comes to what we're teaching our kids in sexual health and when. But we still have a long way to go. And so the proposed new curriculum will address, I think, a lot of these gaps.
Yes.
Although I do still have some concerns about it. Well, I don't think, the new curriculum is less prescriptive in terms of lesson plans and more vague and open-ended for teachers to interpret it and teach their kids as they see fit, to give them a meaningful experience depending on what their style is and what they think will most resonate with their students.
So your problem is you may give someone a curriculum, but it's up to that teacher to do something interpretive with it.
If I were given that leeway, great, I'd take it and run as a teacher.
Yes.
But the majority of teachers do not necessarily feel comfortable or prepared or trained.
And do you have backlash from teachers or from the teachers union?
Very rarely, no. No, very rarely.
They're supportive.
I mean, what I'm teaching is not limited to, but it's consistent with the curriculum. And so the majority of teachers are happy to have me in the classroom. They're always there listening to me teach. So when I leave, they have the language to use with the kids. They know what they know already, and they can follow up with questions and feel more confident doing that.
How often would this happen in a classroom? It's not like we have sex ed once a week.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I'm usually at schools once a year, sometimes once every 2 years. Yeah, and in a perfect world, what I'm teaching the kids would simply complement what they're already learning in the classroom and more importantly, what they're learning at home from their parents. And that's the key, David. It starts with parents. We can't rely on schools to be giving our kids all the information they need. It's just not fair.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you had a magic wand and you were running the system, we have 2 minutes before we're finished with this, what would you do?
I would make sure that not just some kids, but every child in BC from kindergarten to grade 12 gets comprehensive sexual health education from a variety of adults in their life. Their classroom teacher who is well-trained and confident and supported by the government. They would get it from guests like me in their school to complement that information. And most importantly, there would be resources in place for parents to really learn what to teach their kids and when.
What are the oldest kids you teach?
The oldest kids will be grade 10. Yeah, mostly I'm in elementary school.
And do you get into, we just have a minute left, you get into when no means no?
Absolutely. We teach about sexual consent from kindergarten. The basic idea of your body is your body and you say who goes on it and who does not.
Yeah, I love
Absolutely.
I love the signs that I saw recently in the news with about 15 different ways of saying no. That people just don't understand. It's an
important one.
Or they just don't accept. Yeah.
Saleema, thanks so much.
My pleasure, David. Thanks for having me.
Work. Yeah.
Lots to talk about.
Absolutely. So, folks, next week, justice, not charity, is a concept that exists in every major religion around the world and in humanist studies, I'm sure, as well. In other words, let's give someone a fishing rod, not necessarily a fish. So the Justice, Not Charity Working Group will be here next week, and we'll talk about that concept and how it plays out in local communities. Thank you, as always, for being with us here on Shaw Community Television Cable 4. Good night.